I'm doing something a bit different for this video. For two reasons. Firstly, because it's always interesting to try new things and explore things related to Doctor Who that don't fall in the scope of the normal videos. And secondly, because I'm going away and don't have time to do a proper one this time, so you decide which is the real reason. Anyhow, one of the most recognisable and iconic elements of Doctor Who is its theme tune. Standing alongside the Daleks and the TARDIS, it has seeped into British popular culture just as much as those elements of the show, and most people could hum along to it without having to pause to think. It's a unique and unreplicable piece of music, completely unlike any other TV theme, and makes the show stand out from the moment the opening titles start. It's also been a remarkably adaptable piece of music. There have been many different interpretations and arrangements over the years, even if you restrict yourself to what's been used in the TV series only. The difference in styles, sounds and moods has been pretty impressive and has reflected well and reflected badly, depending on the arrangement, the times from which they come. But what's the best one? What's the worst one? What's the median one? Well, I've decided to answer that question from my point of view. It is just my opinion, and I'm very far from an expert in music, so don't take what I'm saying as just some informed view. It's just what I like and what I don't like. Also, you might remember a few seconds ago when I said there was a huge variety if you limit yourself to the TV series. Well, that's exactly what I'll be doing. I'll be ranking the themes using Classic Who, the TV movie and New Who. As if I start including Big Finish, all the Wilderness Years productions, all the professional covers, this video will end up being about 4 hours long. I don't think anyone wants that. I also won't be including minor variants like the rock version of the Capaldi era from before the flood. One-off stuff doesn't count. However, before we get into the list itself, I'll do a quick list of honourable mentions to include my favourite and least favourite themes from outside the TV canon. Honourable mentions! Over the years, Big Finish has created probably several thousand variants of the theme at this point, most of which were done by Howard Carter and aren't very good. However, back in their golden era, they created one of my favourite arrangements of the theme, the 8th Doctor theme by David Arnold, which is the one you can hear playing in the background if you're familiar with it. The one you'll hear playing in the background throughout this video will be the one I'm talking about if you don't know it. Anyway, it's a very different kind of take on the theme, a much slower, darker, more moody interpretation, and it's the kind of thing you'd never get on TV because it's not exciting enough, but I think it sounds terrific. It sounds haunting even, captures a feeling of the vastness and space of time the Doctor travels in, but I think it also manages to have a certain simplicity to it. A common theme with most of the low-ranking gold New Who themes will be how much crap is added onto it, but here we have the bassline melody and a few bits over the top, but they're all orchestrated so well it just makes the whole sound fantastic. David Arnold is of course a composer with a lot of pedigree, and Big Finish getting him when they did was a huge coup, and he absolutely delivered for them. Another honourable mention is the Delaware theme. Now, technically this did appear on TV, as it was inadvertently broadcast on a couple of episodes for their Australian broadcast, but this wasn't intentional and it never had its own run as the main TV theme, which I think is needed to count. I do really like the Delaware theme. Admittedly it's a very acquired taste and it probably was not going to be right as the main theme to be used in the show at any real point in its history, but it's just a bit of fun. It's unique and it's also become endearing in how weird and utterly unsuitable for a main show it is. It's nice and cute, it's nothing more than that. But you don't need more than that sometimes. Another honourable mention is a remix not done for the show itself, the remix by Orbital, the one I used actually at the beginning of the video, which is a fun and unique interpretation, and one that I only know because, well, many Doctor Who DVDs released in 2003 had that sort of 40th anniversary montage on them, and those DVDs were available for several years afterwards, and indeed most of them still are. And so, some of us who bought the DVDs have watched it and remember that montage fondly, and that's I think because of the fun and unique bit of music that went with it. As for a dishonourable mention, the theme from Dimensions in Time is a crime against nature. Then again, so is Dimensions in Time. Anyhow, now let's get to the themes proper. Number 13! When I first watched the 11th Hour, way back in the distant ancient year of 2010, I was really excited to hear what the new theme music would be. Very little about that kind of thing, or how it would be in the Moffat era as it was coming out, had been revealed before that episode was broadcast, so it was going to be a complete surprise. And it was a surprise alright, a surprise at how shit it was. Oh, I really hate this theme, and there's one absolutely huge reason why that immediately puts it off. I hate it when an extra melody is placed over the bass line before the ooh-wee-oo kicks in, and every theme that Murray Gold has done that with will be very low down the list, in case you're wondering. And by that I don't mean a subtle background thing, I mean the full-on duh-duh-duh thing that completely overtakes the original bass line. I hate it! It overcomplicates and overstuffs the theme and removes the uniqueness of it. I also don't like how complex sounding and overstuffed it is. There's just so many different elements to provide such a metaphor for the Moffat era, full of noise, no substance. A lot of it feels like a lot of it's there just to show off. And it feels far too fast-paced, too over the top with its energy for its own good, and frankly, despite all that, it still just feels a little too derivative of the RTD1 theme. Like, he was just too interested in playing it safe, and the only areas where he didn't were bad choices. But mostly it's that opening. Oh, I hate that opening. The bassline is such an important element of the theme tune. Why do you feel the need to fuck with it? It's distracting and kills the momentum of the theme entirely. Hate, hate, hate. Number 12! This is basically identical to the other version, except with a slightly boosted bassline and a bit more wacko. It's slightly better than the other one, because at least it sounds a bit more unique, but otherwise it's the same thing. Still has the awful bassline melody and simply changes up the weird sound effects into something slightly different. It's overstuffed, overcomplicated, not effective. There's also another variant for the Day of the Doctor, which is just this theme but with that awful bassline melody removed, which sounds a lot better than this one and its predecessor, but ultimately a little too bland for the occasion, and I'm also not ranking for the reasons I said earlier as a one-off, not a proper theme. Number 11! RTD2 is a bit of a punching bag within Doctor Who fandom at the moment, mostly deservedly. But I want to say the reason I don't like this theme is not because I associate it with recent bad memories of shitty episodes. There are plenty of themes that I can associate with terrible episodes. I don't like this for two reasons. Firstly, it has another extra melody over the initial bassline, which isn't quite as distracting as the Smith era one, but still annoys me to no end because it adds such unnecessary overcomplication to it and just drowns out the sound. I also dislike the weak bassline as well. It takes focus away from that and puts it all on Gold's extra fluff, which I don't like at all. Combined with probably one of the weakest middle eights, and this is a theme to forget from an era it's quickly becoming obvious, we'd all like to forget fairly quickly. Number 10! I'd say there are only really 3 themes I actually dislike, so already getting into ones I don't really mind, but then again, there's only 15 or so to choose from, so you're going to get through those categories pretty quickly. Anyway, I think Akinola's sole theme for the show is mediocre. It's an attempt to reinvent the original theme, making it a lot denser and more complex, but keeping the basic elements there and not reinventing the wheel as most other arrangements have. As I said, I don't hate it, either the idea or the execution, but I think the biggest problem is it just doesn't feel unique enough. It does just sound too much like the original, but without any of its magic. The bassline just doesn't work for me. I think this needed a much sharper one for like the original to really work. It feels too squidgy, for lack of a better word. There are positives to it though. I like a few additions. Haunting piano motive as the film builds up, theme builds up to the end, I think is a nice addition. More like that would help it make stand out a bit more, but as it is, it just doesn't really. It feels a bit too safe, a little too interested in breaking any new ground, which is in a way the 13th Doctor's era is nicely summed up by. Number 9! Would you be surprised to learn this theme is from the 1980s? No? Well done, you have a functional brain. I like this theme in isolation. It's a very unique and quite bold sound, and certainly nobody's going to accuse it of being too safe like the Akinola theme. But the problem is, its main use isn't in isolation, it's as a TV theme, and this thing, it's just a mood killer. I'll use an example. I'll say the opening to Remembrance of the Daleks sums it up. The voices of the time, the coming of change and civil rights and upheaval, to perfectly illustrate the time period we're going back to then, and then the approaching impending spaceship to show the imminent threat. Wow, what a mood is being built up, and then suddenly we have cheese poured directly down our throats. It just doesn't work in that way for me. Honestly, I'd say it's pretty good in isolation. It's well put together, it's of its time, but it's certainly unique. I certainly think it's got something going for it in the unique arrangement it uses in the opening titles, with the middle 8 prominent and all that. But it's just so cheesy and so 80s and so kef that it just doesn't quite fit. Oh, and it also has a terrible cliffhanger sting which barely sounds like a sting at all, to which I can only ask why. Number 8! This thing's alright. It's fast-paced. It came about as a result of the BBC mandate to speed up the credits, in fact, and that results in an exciting but not overstuffed arrangement. Keeps things relatively simple, and that works in its favour. Just the bassline, the main melody, and a few extra background ones to help piece things together. That part of it works. I'm less fond of the bass line itself, which isn't strong or sharp enough. It's just too weak to really bring everything together. Needed to stand out more akin to the original, I think, but it makes up for that for its energy and pace and its overall solid composition. I don't need much more to say about it than that.
Number 7.
It's funny because when this one first premiered, I actually didn't like it at all, but it's grown on me quite a bit. It's a very unique sound and probably the only Gold theme to try and go for a different kind of sound than huge pomposity. Instead it goes for sort of a more electronic sound. The grand orchestra is refreshingly absent and this is a very different vibe and one I think lends itself well to its era. The bass line is nice and strong, the melody is definitely a refreshing sound, it's definitely trying something different and that's always appreciated on the rare occasions when Gold does that. My only real problem with it is such a very weak middle 8 that almost sounds out of tune, and this means it ends up working much better in the short opening format, which admittedly isn't a huge problem as that's the format it's intended for, but it doesn't really quite work as a full listen as many other themes do. Overall though, it's a unique and refreshing theme, and one that shows Gold can occasionally do something different if he tries. Occasionally being the key word.
Number 6.
Yeah, I know, this one was only used once, but it's literally the only one that represents this era, so what do you want to do? It's funny, because this one's about as far from the original intent of the theme as you can get. It's huge and bombastic, there's no strangeness to it at all. It starts with the middle 8, which has always sounded far more like a TV theme than the main melody, which tells you all you need to know about what they were intending with it. But you have to remember the context in which it was made, and in there I think it works fantastically. This was a very unique interpretation of Doctor Who for good or bad, and this is a very unique interpretation of the theme, a more mainstream theme for its attempt to break through to the American TV mainstream. But there's more to it than that. It's very well orchestrated, certainly a cut above any other Gold themes, and there's some nice subtleties that add depth to it, like the little tinkling piano, certainly there had never been anything like that before. My only real issue is that it's not an adaptable theme. It works for the TV movie, but I fail to see how it could really have been a theme for the resulting series. Overall though, I like it. It's an interpretation like no other that fits its provenance well.
Numbers 5 and 4.
This one's a two-way tie between the Dominic Glynn Trial of a Time Lord theme and the original 9th and 10th Doctor's New Who theme. It's a tie because I share similar opinions on these themes. I like them, but I think they're quite a lot better in theory than they are in practice. The Glynn theme is much darker and more melancholy than what had come before, the jauntiness has replaced my mood and I think that's a good idea, and parts of it do work, the bass line and melody themselves achieve this just fine. Keeping this darker tones to the theme compared to its predecessor while not going over the top in how dark and epic it sounds, like, well, anytime apart from the Arnold theme, Big Finish have tried to create a new theme. The problem is that everything that surrounds it undermines it. All the electronic noise grates and distracts. If you listen to the full version, there's a bit where the theme just kind of stops and farts at you for a while, and the less said about the middle 8 that sounds like it's being played on the cross between a harmonica and an accordion, the better. The foundations are there, but the details are what lets it down. As for Gold's first theme, it's similar. I like the strong, simple bass line, and the decision to use the Derbyshire melody pretty much as it was originally helps with the familiarity that was vital in making New Who a success, but the problem is again in unnecessary additions. Electronic additions that have dated this one and unfortunately weakened the bass line at points. It's difficult to describe what I mean, but if you sort of listen to how the bass line is in some kinds, you probably get what I mean. It's also worth mentioning there are essentially two versions of this theme. The original for Series 1 was stronger with that electronic stuff and no middle 8, and the one for Series 2 and 3 with the former toned down and the latter added. I prefer the second version as this middle 8 is one of this theme's stronger parts. But on the other hand, I do like these themes a lot despite their issues. The Glynn theme does manage to strike a good balance between dark, powerful and unique, and I think it really suits the time it was going for very well, and you know, it is a very unique sound and one I think is actually probably the most timeless theme of the 80s. The first Gold's theme biggest asset as well is that it feels like a successful attempt to wed features of the iconic original with new ideas to create the perfect balance to reintroduce the audience to the theme and indeed to the show. I like them both, but I feel there's just a bit of potential, but missed potential that holds them back.
Number 3.
In its way, this might be the most important theme of them all, for it proved to be the first time you could successfully pull off a radical rearrangement of the original. For 17 years, the original and its 1967 variant had ruled the roost, and to bring in this radically different sound was a bold move, but one that paid off and proved how adaptable the theme could be. And it did this by just being a great theme. Clean, tidy and focused, with a strong bassline and melody and avoiding over-the-top distractions. It sounds very different to the original but keeps its spirit, electronic and otherworldly sounding, but now with more of a modern feel to it. Of course, modern at one time becomes dated at another, and you wouldn't mistake this for any decade other than the 80s, but unlike the Keff McCulloch theme, I don't think it sounds dated. Of its time, certainly, but it doesn't overcome you with its 80s-ness, just the theatre of it. But mostly it's the strong sounds, and the decision not to distract and keep things very ordered and tidy. I can tell you why pretty much every element is there. One of its strongest elements actually is its very bold sting, which means at any moment can lead into the credits and it still be effective. Oh, and it's maybe worth mentioning the opening credits of the Sixth Doctor stories where it was used sounds slightly different, a bit deeper in tone, which is pointless, but it doesn't negatively affect it, so we'll call it a wash. Overall, this theme's great. It's a bold experiment that paid off, and the precursor to the way the theme would evolve in the future.
Number 2.
The 1967 theme was of course only really a variant of the original, but I think it's distinct enough to count on its own. The obvious changes of the faster paced bassline and the electronic spangles at the start are what really separate it out from the original, but I also think it's notable for being the first theme set out into different variants of versions, unlike the original which only ever had one used in slightly different ways. There you have different opening and closing variants and things that changed with them over the years. For what it's worth, I prefer the earlier version used for the Second Doctor's era, which had a cleaner sound and a longer build up to the melody. The Third and Fourth Doctor eras also shied away from the middle eight, which is never something I'm a fan of. But ultimately, this is a faster paced update of the original, but works with both being true to its spirit and willing to update with the times. Much of what I like about it is really stuff I like about the original, so we might as well get to it.
Number 1.
November 23, 1963. A new science fiction series is starting, and the first impression any viewer will get of it will be the theme. This is an important moment to set what the show will be. And well, the answer was unlike anything that had come before. This strange electronic music perfectly sets the otherworldly tone, showing this as something bold and unique, something new, and that theme perfectly gets it across. Written initially by Ron Grainer, he envisaged it as far more of a traditional TV theme. However, it was Delia Derbyshire in a radiophonic workshop who arranged it to sound so very different from anything that had come before. Grainer was reportedly so impressed with what she created from his theme that he unsuccessfully tried to get her awarded co-authorship credits. And he was right to do so. She took his notes and truly made it the sound of the theme, a sound that remains truly iconic to this day. What makes it so great? The bass line grabs the attention, odd sounding but strong and decisive. The melody as well keeps it grounded, but it's an alien sound, one that's fitting for the man we'll see later on in the episode, but also means that it doesn't just stay strong and dark and deep like the bass line suggests. It adds that contrast, which is what adds to the alienness of the sound. And then of course there's the middle eight, which breaks things up, allowing for briefly more of an upbeat sound to reinforce that while it's a strange theme for a strange show, it's still one based on adventure and hope. And in the end, Doctor Who is a world like no other, and all these elements combined means it's a theme like no other that represents it well. It's easy to forget with all the arrangements I've talked about how iconic this original is, and how important it was in the development of electronic music. It's a pioneer for its music style as well as a show it was attached to, and you can find it on sort of electronic music compilations that have absolutely nothing to do with Doctor Who. The original wedges out the 1967 version for me because it is slower and allows the elements to stand simply on their own rather than being more drowned out. You don't need all the extra faff that Murray Gold loves to add, you don't need to add more and more on top of it, it's the simplicity that makes it stand out. Bassline, melody, middle eight, repeat as you need to. It needs no more than that, because not a single element of it is wasted. And yes, obviously there's electronic stuff over the top, but that's fine. Small subtle things like that add to it. It's keeping that simplicity that's important, and is where other things have gone wrong, and is why the original I think is so iconic and so excellent. For me, it's a masterpiece and the best theme. Well, that's the list, and there's all my opinions. Remember, as I said, it's just my opinion. I don't claim to be anyone in the know. Do let me know if you agree or disagree, or if you are in the know and can correct anything I've said. And indeed, if you enjoyed this and would like to see more of this kind of occasional interlude from reviews, let me know. But reviews will be back next time, don't you worry. Comments and suggestions always welcome, and thank you for watching.